So let me start with the very beginning of the education process here. In Hong Kong, most of the children would start some form of organized and formal education around the age of 2. So it's basically a case where most of the kids barely know how to stand up for a long period of time, walk and run, and then they will be sent to school to learn, which is okay. And in the context of Hong Kong, theoretically, preschool education is not mandatory. So basically, the parents can choose to go or not to go. But increasingly, we know that more and more parents would send the kids to school at a very early stage. 2 and 2+ most of the time, and sometimes you also find some of the kids would go to school before the age of 2. And because of the growing numbers of parents sending their kids to school at an early stage, so this creates certain impacts on our system. First of all, it intensified the process of preparation for going to school at such an early stage. For instance, for many parents, they think that they need backup plans. They need to make sure that they will be able to send their kids to school right at the age of 2. 20 years ago, when I sent my elder son to pre-nursery, well, basically I applied for 2 schools. And at that time, I think that actually I'm quite crazy because actually we can afford not to go to school at the age of 2. So if I applied and failed, so what? But I did apply for 2 schools, and then we have a backup, and it works out perfectly. 20 years later, when I asked most of the younger parents, so what have you done? Normally, the answer is that they have applied for something like 10, some even 12 nurseries, preschools, so that they would be very sure that there would be a plan, there would be a backup, and so by the time of August, after summer holiday, their kids would go to school. And as a result of that, this created a very interesting situation because every parent would apply for something like 12 schools. So originally, probably there would be enough positions for accommodating the kids, but because everyone is holding 12, so there will be a shortage. And because of shortage, people get nervous. And the more nervous you are, you apply for more. So people starting from 12, 14, 16, and so on. Of course, you will ask the parents that, why on earth you need to do that? And then they start cooking up new narratives. It's not just about backup. It's actually quite a good training for kids learning how to go through interviews. So the first 8 is just for warming up. From 9th to 12th, these are the serious stuff. And for the 13th to 16th, it's just cooling down. So it's very much like sports. So as a result of that, people get a lot more nervous because everyone is holding 16 option, and then only 3 days before the beginning of the semester, they will say, okay, I'm not coming. So people get nervous. And the more nervous you are, you start perceiving entrance into nursery, preschools in a different way because you think that this is a competition. And it is a competition that you need to win. As a result of that, they start preparation. And schools also started to organize interviews. Interviewing a kid about to enter school at the age of 2. So at the time of interview, he or she would be around, 18 months, 20 months, barely able to walk towards the desk and be interviewed. I'm never quite sure about the contents of the interview, but I'm knowing from some of my respondents saying that, that will be questions about names of parents, address, how do you come to this place, and so on and so forth. But this would be easy nowadays. Increasingly, you have more and more sophisticated interviews, including I've seen a case where there will be teachers in another classroom to give instructions in English so that to make sure that the kids know how to respond, like you need to jump 3 times. And then there will be a principal observing what is happening there. And then there will be a second session of interview to make sure that you know how to respond to further questioning. So as a result of that, people get nervous, and also you started to have new business of preparing one-year-old kids for future interview before the age of 2. This is the beginning of the process. But mind you, this is barely the beginning. For most of our children, they need to go through something like 15, 22 years of all this kind of competition throughout their education career. And the interesting part of it is that once you start to be competitive at the age of 2, then you start worrying about entrance to kindergartens. You're becoming more worrying about entrance in the primary school. And the big challenge will be getting into secondary school and then university and then postgraduate studies. So first of all, the pressure is never ending. Anxiety is growing. And more interesting is, despite the government telling you that, education and including higher education is going to be becoming more and more popular and accessible. Quota has been expanded. So you should calm down. But this comes to the first point I want to make. This is the first irony that I would like to state here is, despite the fact of the popularization of higher education, pressure on education competition has not been reduced. In fact, because of the popularization of higher education, this creates another most intriguing situation. More and more parents think that, getting a university degree is not enough. You need more. And in the context of Hong Kong, this is becoming even more challenging because our economy has shifted from a more diversified economy with manufacturing and other economic activities towards highly concentrating on services. And for high finance, for business service, you require credentials in order to enter the job market. So for a lot of parents, they became very nervous because how to prepare my children to have all this qualification to be qualified for what they call decent jobs. This will be important. So to get a university, that's become something basic. And more interestingly is that, education qualification is something what I call positional goods. By this I mean, these are the kinds of goods that not depending on its own quality. It depends on the consumption of the same good by other people. Meaning that if you have an undergraduate degree, by itself, of course, it's okay. But once you find from your peers that they all have MA, MEd, even PhD, then you start to worry. You start to think that, probably you have not enough. So it's relative. And it's also positional because you keep on comparing with other people. And so as a result of the popularization of higher education, it actually creates a very interesting situation where increasingly we think it's not enough to have a university degree. In fact, we need to have a degree from a prestigious university or from a prestigious program. Those most difficult to enter will be better. So as a result, most of the parents will start thinking that, not only did I need to prepare my children to get into university, in fact, I want them to enter only certain universities. So I need to prepare them for that. So this is irony too, saying that, the popularization of higher education not only have not reduced pressure on education competition, in fact, it intensified it. It makes people even more nervous because you never get enough. You always look across the shoulder and find out what other people have and make sure that you're ahead of them. So pressure intensified, competition is becoming more competitive. Well, but in many other countries, in many other places, the intensification of competition probably would be just ending there. You think that, okay, I work hard, I study hard, I try to do my best in the public examination, and then I would get to the university that I desired. That would be all right. But in Hong Kong, we have a very strange situation. This is a society putting a lot of emphasis on achievement. And in a way, I would say that most of us are very motivated. However, being hyperly motivated, hyperly achievement-oriented, again, bring us into a very strange position. Increasingly, parents think that not only I need to start early at the age of 2, and in fact, in the process of entering primary school, secondary school, I need to prepare them for the best. So what should I do? I should ensure that, they would be able to distinguish themselves from the others. I should ensure that they would have the kind of quality to send out signals to the teachers, to the school system, for people who are assessing entrance to university, knowing that my children are the best. So what should you do? Okay, you start thinking about doing a little bit of extras. On top of curriculum, on top of schooling, on top of which school you go to, you think probably we need more. Let's start with sports. So in the old days when I was a secondary school student, it's perfectly okay for you just focus on soccer. And I can't even play basketball, quite honestly. But being a member of the school team, of the soccer team, in the old days, in the 1970s, that's very decent, very respectable. Your classmates love you, good enough. Nowadays, if you tell people that, I happen to be a member of the school team for soccer, then people will expect you to say, and then? And then you will say that, okay, I need some other things as well, but basically, soccer players don't swim, so what do you expect from me? Okay, then you start saying, okay, why not other things like music? Okay, then we start musical instrument. In Hong Kong, we know that, in terms of the examination of your, performance in musical instruments, you have different layers of certificates. And most of us would do very well in those kinds of examinations. And so as a result, more and more of us start learning to play musical instruments. And as a result of that, nowadays some of the secondary schools would say that all students would be required to learn how to play one musical instrument. But in that notice to parents, they have a bracket. Piano would not be counted. So if piano is not a musical instrument, what do you mean by that? Well, that's a matter, because it's saying that, just knowing to play one piece of musical instrument, this would not be good enough. So we have a proliferation of all these extras. Nowadays, musical instrument, that's ordinary. Soccer, well, below ordinary. You need non-local learning experience, you need summer school, you need internship, you need this, you need that, and so on and so forth. So as a result, it's a proliferation of all kinds of activities. And some of them, of course, are very useful. Some of them, I'm not so sure. The other day, I was observing a school that teaches children to do those all calculations in their own minds very, very quickly. And of course, all the kids perform very well. But then I said that, we have calculators nowadays, and it's very cheap. So why do we need to do that? Do we need to do that anymore? Well, it doesn't matter, because it's, again, something extra. So in the context of Hong Kong, we come to a very strange situation. The very fact that we are very motivated, we are very much achievement-oriented, it pushes us toward a situation where we keep on doing the extras, even though that we know that it doesn't serve a purpose. It is not educational. It is becoming too much. But it's unstoppable. This is the irony-free that I want to make, saying that, this is not only a situation where we keep on comparing ourselves with the others. In fact, because of all these credentials are all positional, we keep on doing it. Even though that we think that, this is not the way to do it, but we will keep on doing it because we need to stay ahead of competition. So we end up in a situation where the whole competition is unstoppable. Even though that, this is not the way that I should push my children, but when I look across the shoulder and I find out what the other parents are doing, I would ask my child to do this and that. And in fact, on top of this, I have a taller list of things that you need to do. Is it a good idea? No. Can this be changed? Probably. The title of our theme today is about going beyond the status quo. What I do think Hong Kong people need to do is sit back, think, and going back to the basics, and rethink about something very simple. What is the purpose of education? Thank you very much.